Chapter 11. The door slid open and Card stepped onto the Wild Card's bridge. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," he said. "How are we doing?" "Fine, Chief," Dankin said, half turning around in the helm seat to look at him. "We're almost to the Noskin system. Just a few more minutes." "Good." Card took a step towards him, sending a quick look around at the other stations, and paused, frowning. "What are you doing up here, Hisishi?" he asked the young Tagorian female at the sensor station. She turned to face him. "Dankin asked me to take the station," she said, her mewling Togorian speech as purringly feline as her appearance. "He said it was time I took some bridge practice." Card looked at Dankin. The other was gazing studiously at his board again, his face in profile, but even so, Card could see the secret amusement bubbling there. "Yes, I suppose it is," he said, taking a second look around the bridge at the other stations. O'Donnell, in the co-pilot seat, was wearing the same expression as Dankin. So was Pormphil at the engine monitor, though on his Carestian face it was a little harder to spot. Even Chin, who tended to be rather grandfatherly towards new recruits these days, was having to try hard not to smile. "Have you done a status check against the baseline recently?" he asked, looking back at Hisishi. The Tagorian's yellow eyes seemed to cloud over a little. "No, chieftain," she said. "I will do one now if you request it." "Please," Card nodded. "The baseline data card is in the computer room." "I obey," Hisishi said, uncoiling her lithe body from her seat. She padded across the bridge, her claws making little clicking sounds against the metal floor as she walked, and exited. "All right, gentlemen," Card said mildly as the door slid shut behind her. "Am I going to have to guess?" "Oh, it's nothing much, Chief," Dankin said, radiating a thoroughly unconvincing innocence. "It's just that she's never been to Tarek's place before. I thought she'd get the best view if she was up here when we came out of hyperspace." "Ah," Card said. "And you were curious to see how high she'd jump?" "Well, yeah, maybe a little," Dankin admitted. "We like to think of it as her full initiation into the crew," O'Donnell said helpfully. "I see." Card looked around at the others, all of them grinning openly now. "I suppose it hadn't occurred to you that startling a Togorian this way might be just the slightest bit dangerous?" "Oh, come on, Captain, it's harmless fun," O'Donnell said. "Mara lets us do this when she's on the bridge." "Anyway, Cap, those are a long tradition," Chin said. "Billy's folks surely cooked up something like it when you joined up with them, he?" "Billy's people weren't nearly so creative," Card said dryly. As for Mara, her excuse is that she wants to use the Force to examine how new crew members behave under stress. "Sounds like a good reason to me," Dankin offered. "Better we check them out here than find out what they're made of when we're in the middle of a genuine crisis." "You're rationalizing, of course," Card pointed out. "Probably," Dankin agreed shamelessly. "Come on, Chief. Give us a break. It's been deadly quiet around here lately." "An enraged Tagorian would certainly break up the monotony," Card said, shaking his head. Still, horseplay aside, they did have a point. If Isishi was going to become a permanent member of the Wildcard's crew, they really did need to find out how she reacted when startled. "Be it upon your own heads. I'll watch from over there." He stepped over to the bulkhead beside Chin, where he had a good view of the sensor station, and as he did so, the door slid open and Hisishi padded back in. "I have the data card, Chieftain Card," she said, holding it up for his inspection. "Good," Card confirmed, giving the label a quick check. Hisishi had a good grasp of spoken basic, but her Arabesh reading skills were still a little shaky. "Go ahead and set it up." "I obey." She sat down at their console again, clawed hands tapping delicately at the controls. "Here we go," Dankin said. "Stand by sublight engines." Gripping the levers, he eased them back. The mottled sky turned to star lines and collapsed to stars. And there, floating in the darkness directly ahead of them, was an Imperial Star Destroyer. Hisashi came half out of her seat, hissing something vicious sounding in her language that Card didn't catch. Her mouth was stretched wide open, the fangs glistening whitely in the pale bridge lighting. Her fur stood stiffly out from her body, making her look half again as big as normal, and in her yellow eyes was a crazy fire. Star Destroyer directly ahead, Denkin called out, as if someone on the bridge might somehow have missed it. Range, 2 kilometers. Turbolaser batteries swiveling towards us, O'Donnell put in. Pormphil? Engines at full power, the Caristian said, his 8 cheek nostrils wheezing rhythmically. Picking up a transmission, Cap, Chin announced. Acknowledge it, Card said, watching Hisashi closely. She hadn't moved, but was still half standing staring at the dark bulk and glittering lights ahead. Are they activating any tractor beams? For about half a second, the bridge seemed to hold its collective breath. Then, with a quiet hiss, Hisashi sank back into her seat and began tapping keys on her control board. No tractor beams have yet been activated, she mewed. The turbolaser batteries. Her stiffened fur seemed to wilt a little as she tapped more keys. There is no power in them, she said, sounding confused. No, there is power in... She turned to face Card, her yellow eyes narrowing. There are 3 functional turbolaser batteries, she said. No more. Good, Card said calmly. That means we're in the right place. Always good to know that. Chin? The owner awaits, Cap, Chin said, smiling openly now as he tapped the comm key. He'd like to speak with you. Thank you, Card said. Hello, Booster. How are things? Never better, you old pirate, Booster Terrek's cheerful voice boomed from the bridge speaker. Welcome to the errant venture. You shopping today or just breaking in a new crew member? Hisashi hissed softly, her fingers rubbing gently against the control board, but she said nothing. We're shopping, Card said. For information, mostly. Are you really? Booster said, in a tone that made Card picture him rubbing his hands together. Well, well, this is definitely my star-shining day. You want to bring the wild card aboard, or should I send you a shuttle? We'll come aboard if you have the space, Card said. I'm not in the market for any hardware myself, but I imagine my people will want to browse. Well, come on in then, Booster said cheerfully. Trader's Alley is open and ready for business, as are the rest of our little boutiques. Go ahead and take, let's see, Docking Bay 15. I'll have someone there to escort you up onto the bridge after you've turned your people loose. Don't forget to remind them that Trader's Alley is a cash-only business. Of course, Card said. I'll see you soon. He motioned to Chin, and the other shut down the comm. Take us in, Dankin, he said. You know how to get into the docking bays? No problem, Dankin said, getting busy at his board. At the sensor station, Hisashi stood up and turned to face Card. Was this then a joke, chieftain? She asked. Her tone and expression were rigid, not betraying anything of what she was thinking. I do not appreciate being made to look foolish. You didn't look foolish, Card assured her. You merely looked startled, after which you returned to your assigned duties. The Togorian looked briefly around at the others. Humans enjoy making others look foolish, she said, an edge of challenge in her voice. Humans do enjoy jokes, Card acknowledged, but humor was not the primary purpose of the exercise. Hisashi's fur had been stiffening again. Now slowly it settled back down. You wish to see if I would run in fear. Or freeze, or panic, Card agreed. If you had done any of those things, I would have been executed. Card shook his head. I don't execute my people, Hisashi, he told her. Not unless a serious crime has been committed against me or the organization. No, you'd simply have been moved to a different position. Some post where you'd be less likely to face this kind of stress. An information gatherer, perhaps, or else a shadow business liaison. Hisishi's ears twitched. I do not wish such a post. I'm glad to hear that, Card said, because frankly, I think you would be wasted there. You'd be far more useful aboard the Wildcard or any of my other ships. The Tagorian seemed to think about that. I would prefer to stay here if that would be possible. I think there's a good chance of that, Card said. We'll speak more about it later. He gestured to her control board. You can return the data card to the computer room. We won't need to run that baseline check until we leave. Hisashi showed her fangs again. I obey, chieftain, she said. Delicately plucking the data card from its slot with the tips of her claws, she padded from the bridge. Well, gentlemen, Card said, stepping over behind Hisishi's vacated chair. You've had your joke, and we all lived through it. Did she pass? Definitely, Dankin said. With banners waving, I'd say. Agreed, O'Donnell nodded. Took her a second to gather her wits, but then she got right back down to business. And she did not forget how to use her console, as some have done, Pornful added, whistling emphatically through his nostrils. I do not believe even Elkin did so well when he was thus tested. Perhaps, Card said, though I'd wager Hisishi's left something behind that Elkin didn't. Pornful sniffed the air. The aroma of nervous sweat, he suggested. No. Card pointed at the group of small indentations in the edge of Hisishi's control board. Claw marks. A familiar figure was waiting for Card and O'Donnell as they headed down the Wildcard's ramp. Ah, Captain Card, Noara Ven said, dipping his head in the formal Twi'lek bow. It is good to see you again. And you, Ven, Card nodded back. I trust life is treating you well? It is all enjoyment aboard the errant Venture, Ven said, smiling thinly. Come, Booster's waiting for you on the bridge. The Twi'lek led the way through a bank of turbolifts, limping only slightly on his artificial leg. I notice you've lost some of your turbolasers, Card commented. My people were reading only 3 active batteries as we came in. Fortunes of business, I'm afraid, Ven said, keying the turbolift call. We had to break 2 of them down for parts for 3 others, but then had to sell those 3 to purchase components for the hyperdrive. By my count, that still leaves 5 from your original 10 batteries, Card pointed out. Yes, Ven said, rearranging his head-tail on his shoulder as the turbolift door slid ponderously open. The other 2 are currently under repair. Ah. They stepped into the turbolift. The door closed again, and the car began to move. Only 2 of the turbolifts in this section are still working, Ven said. You'd be amazed at how many things there are that can go wrong on a Star Destroyer. I can imagine, Card said. Back during the height of the rebellion, I heard a special operations man describe a Star Destroyer as 174,000 design flaws waiting to be exploited. Ven tossed his head. A low-end estimate. Booster finally gave in and hired a group of 200 techs, Verpine actually, to upgrade some of our systems. That was 7 months ago, and they're still at it. I suppose that's what you get when you try to run a ship this size with less than what's supposed to be the bare minimum skeleton crew, Card suggested, looking around the car. Entropy will always get ahead of you. I presume Booster isn't thinking of selling. Ven favored him with a sly grin. Why? Are you thinking of buying? I could probably be persuaded, Card said. Certainly if it comes down to the ship falling into someone else's hands. I wouldn't want to face down a Hutt in one of these things. Oh, I don't know, the Twi'lek said dryly. Given the Hutt's past performance, it might be entertaining to watch. Not if it was someone like Jabba. True, Ven conceded. At any rate, I'll pass your offer on to Booster. The turbolift car settled to a slightly clunky stop, and the door slid open to reveal the aft bridge. Booster asked me to apologize for not welcoming you in person, incidentally, Venn said, as he waved them towards the archway that led to the main bridge. You'll understand in the moment why he couldn't. No problem, Card said, glancing casually around at the aft bridge consoles. Here and there an indicator light still winked, but for the most part the consoles seemed to be either on standby or to have been shut down completely. He stepped into the archway, turning back around to throw a look at the aft bridge hologram pad, which also seemed to be shut down. Talon Card, Booster's voice boomed. Welcome aboard. Card completed his turn. Booster was striding down the command walkway towards them, arms flung open wide in the expansive welcome. And walking right behind him. And look who else has come to visit the old man, Booster continued, half turning to gesture just as expansively at them. Yes, indeed, Card said, motioning O'Donnell forward. O'Donnell, I don't believe you've met Booster's family. This is his lovely daughter Mirax, and his son-in-law, Commander Corin Horn. Current member of General Wedge Antilles' celebrated rogue squadron. Ah, O'Donnell said guardedly. Pleased to meet you. That's the group Venn here used to be with, isn't it? Noara and I used to fly together, yes, Corin said, his tone equally guarded. Booster, I suppose I don't mind that Card knows we're here, but... Relax, Corin, Booster soothed, stepping forward to briefly grip Card's hand. Card's top people are just as trustworthy as he is. Corin shot Card a decidedly ambivalent look. That makes me feel so much better. Don't worry, Card assured him, offering his hand. We won't tell Coruscant one of its most revered heroes is associating with riffraff. Corin took the preferred hand, his face relaxing into a slight smile. I appreciate that. How's Mara doing these days? Quite well, thank you, Card said. As a matter of fact, she should be along any time. She's temporarily flying with the Starry Ice, which is supposed to be meeting me here. He shifted his gaze to the woman. Hello, Mirax. It's been a long time. Where's the little one? Valen's right down there, Mirax said, giving Card a far more genuine smile than her husband's, as she waved towards the starboard crew pit. And he's 6 years old. Not so little anymore. Indeed not, Card said, taking a couple of steps to the side and looking down the crew pit. The boy was perched on a couple of extra cushions in one of the chairs, staring at one of the displays, completely oblivious to the visitors or the scattering of Booster's men, manning some of the other consoles. Teaching him to fly the ship? Hardly, Mirax said, coming up beside him and smiling fondly down at their son. Dad set up one of the tractor beam consoles so we could play games. Do you want to say hello? Don't disturb him, Card said. Perhaps we'll have time later. Is he still keeping up with his music? Like a Minoc with his tail on fire, Booster said wryly. I just bought him a new Cordo Kilo. He'd already worn out his first one. But seriously, Card, I'd appreciate it if you would keep Corin's presence here to yourself. This is supposed to be a quiet meeting. Only a handful of New Republic officials know anything about it. I understand, Card said, eyeing Corin again. A secret mission, eh? Cloak and blade, skulking around darkened cantinas, whispered conversations with shadowy contacts? That sort of thing? I'm sure you realize we can't discuss it with you, Corin said, his face not quite stony. Yes, of course, Card said. Say no more. He nodded towards the crew pit. Though I can't say I approve of your superiors allowing you to take your family along on such a dangerous mission. It's nothing like that, Booster said, with a touch of mild exasperation. All Corin needs is a little information. Booster, Corin snapped, glaring at his father-in-law. Seal your word port, will you? Perhaps I can help, Card offered. I do have certain information sources of my own, some of which, I dare say, are better even than Booster's. Thanks for the offer, Corin said. We'll manage. He does have a point, Corin, Booster said, rubbing his cheek thoughtfully. Maybe you ought to lay the situation out for him. No. Corin shook his head. No offense, Card, but this is high-level stuff. You're not authorized to know anything about it. Yes, but... Booster began. No, that's all right, Card said, holding up a hand. If his superiors don't even want outsiders knowing he and his family are here, they certainly wouldn't want him discussing his errand. Exactly, Corin said. Thank you for understanding. So, if I may, I'll just borrow Booster for a few minutes to discuss my errand, Card continued, reaching into his inside jacket pocket and pulling out a data card. But before I forget, Mirax, I brought this for your son. Mirax frowned as he handed her the data card. What is it? An Eddy and tonal card for his quarter kilo, Card told her blandly. I understand it's proper etiquette for a guest to bring a small gift for his host's children. Corin leaned over her shoulder to look at the data card, a slightly sandbagged look on his face. But how did you know? He looked back at Card, shifted a rapidly hardening glare to his father-in-law. Booster? Not guilty, Booster said hastily, holding up both hands. I didn't tell anyone you were coming, not even my own people. As I said, Card said quietly, my information sources are quite good. For a minute the bridge was silent. Corin looked at Booster, then at Mirax, got no help from either of them, and finally looked back at Card. What's it gonna cost me? Card shrugged. Whatever it's worth, of course. We can negotiate price later. Corin looked at Booster. I've heard that before. If you'd prefer, we could leave that part up to Counselor Organa Solo, Card offered. In the past, she and I have always been able to arrive at a mutually acceptable arrangement. I'd hate to think what some of those arrangements might have cost us, Corin growled. All right, fine. I presume you're aware we've had a lot of demonstrations and riots lately against Bothan businesses and consulates. Over the revelations contained in the Kamas document, Card murmured. Right. Well, in and among all those protests, we're starting to hear the name Vengeance being batted around. Not as a word, but as a group or organization. Card looked at O'Donnell. Have we heard anything about that? I haven't personally, O'Donnell said, but there's a lot of stuff our sources send in that I don't have the time to look at. We'll do a data search when we get back to the wild card, Card said. What are Coruscant's conclusions? No conclusions yet, just questions, Corin said. The main ones being who and what this vengeance is, and whether they're homegrown or getting help from outside. Let me guess. The Empire? Corin's eyes narrowed slightly. You say that like you don't believe it. Not exactly, Card corrected. I say that like someone who rather cynically notices that whenever anything goes wrong in the New Republic, official blaming fingers immediately zero in on the Empire. That's a little unfair, Booster said, especially considering the Empire's long history of this kind of meddling. I'm not saying they're not involved, Card said. I'm simply warning against the automatic assumption that they are. But... No, he's right, Corin said reluctantly. There are a lot of beings who remember the Empire doing exactly the same thing to us, blaming the rebellion for everything, then using that as an excuse to tighten their grip. That's why my visit here was supposed to be kept secret, in fact. General Bella Bliss didn't want it leaking out that we were even thinking in this direction. Card nodded. He should have guessed Bella Bliss would be the one who'd put the Ratian whisperfly in Corin's ear. Unlike some of the New Republic's leaders, Bela Bliss knew how to keep his eye on his goal, and when necessary, to ignore the shortcomings of the people he might have to deal with in order to reach that goal. Understood, he said. We'll check our files. If there's nothing there, we'll start some quiet inquiries and see what we can find. Sounds good, Booster said. And as long as we're trading wish lists here, you also had some information you wanted, right? Two simple questions, actually, Card said. First of all, our friend Luke Skywalker is trying to locate the Kavrilhu pirates. Any idea as to which rock they might have buried themselves under? I know they've got a base on Amoris, Booster said, pulling out a datapad and keying it on. And let's see. Seems to me their major stronghold is, right. Here it is. A hollowed out asteroid in the Charon system. Card shook his head. They've abandoned their Amoris site, he told Booster. And according to Mara, Skywalker just finished chasing them off their asteroid. What did he do that for? Booster asked, holding up a hand. Never mind. I don't want to know. Well, if those are gone, then I can't help you. Second question? Before he went to Charon, Skywalker helped stop a pirate raid at Iphigenia, Card said, glancing casually around the bridge. No one else was in earshot. No idea which group was involved. During the battle, he sensed what he thought was a group of clones aboard one of the pirate ships. No one moved, but the atmosphere was suddenly rigid. I thought the Empire had already run through its supply of Mount Tantus clones, Mirek said, a shadow of dread in her voice. That's what Coruscant says, Booster confirmed, not sounding any happier than his daughter. At least to us outsiders. Corran? As far as I know, it's the truth, Corran said. It's been years since we ran across any clone casualties in military action. How long has it been since you looked for them? O'Donnell asked. Good point, Corran conceded. I don't know. It's hard to believe there could be any of them left, Booster said. They were some of the best and brightest troops Thrawn had. You'd think Dala or someone else would have spent them long ago. Unless Thrawn puts them in deep cover where Dala couldn't find them, Card said. What for? Booster scoffed. Saving them? For what? And why would they suddenly be making their appearance now? Corran added. We don't know that they are suddenly making their appearance, O'Donnell reminded him tartly. Maybe they've been out there all along, and it's just that you hotshot military guys haven't noticed. Corran took half a step towards him. Look, O'Donnell, when we're busy trying to keep peace around the galaxy. Easy, gentlemen, Card said, stepping between them and holding up a hand. Let's try to remember we're all on the same side here, shall we? O'Donnell's lips puckered. Yeah, sure. Why don't you head back to the wild card, O'Donnell? Card suggested. Get started on that data search. Sure, O'Donnell muttered again. Good idea. I'll escort you down, Van offered, stepping forward. Card looked at him in mild surprise. The Twi'lek had been so quiet he'd almost forgotten he was there. It's easy to get lost on a ship this size. The expression on O'Donnell's face clearly indicated his opinion of that as an excuse, but he merely nodded and headed aft, Van at his side. My apologies, Commander Horn, Card said quietly as the two of them crossed under the archway and disappeared into the aft bridge. O'Donnell doesn't have the same fond memories of the New Republic military that I do. That's all right, Corran said darkly. I have certain unfond memories of smugglers myself. Corran, Mirek said warningly, taking his arm. The X-Wing pilot patted their hand. Present company excluded, of course, he amended. Let's get back to business. Thank you, Card said. What we know for sure, and all we know for sure, is that Skywalker sends clones aboard those ships. Our first job is to answer one simple question. Whether they're Imperial leftovers or whether someone else has found another cache of cloning cylinders. Someone such as the Kavrilhu pirates? Mirex asked. That thought had crossed my mind, Card agreed soberly. It could very well be that my two questions for your father are in fact interconnected. He smiled at Booster. In which case, of course, I'd expect a discount on price. Booster rolled his eyes exaggeratedly. For... Yo, Captain! A voice called up from one of the crew pits. What is it, Shish? Booster called back. Got a ship incoming. Reads out as the Starry Ice, Shish reported. Pilot wants landing instructions. You want me to fix her up? Key the transmission over to me, Booster instructed him, pulling out his comlink. She'll probably be asking about you anyways, he added to Card as he handed him the slender cylinder. Might as well save ourselves a little time. Thank you. Card thumbed the comlink on. Mara, this is Card. How are things? Running quite smoothly, thank you, Mara said. If she was surprised to hear his voice, she was hiding it well. Though now that he thought about it, there weren't a lot of things that ever seemed to surprise her. Afraid we didn't have time to swing by Dronsine for that cargo. That's all right, Card said. Fawn can make the pickup after she drops you here. How did the pirate hunt go? Complete washout, she said. We tracked their vector to Dewar, but then lost it completely. The traffic around there was fierce. Starspeeder 3000s all over the place. It's a pollination season for the singfruit groves, Booster murmured. Peace breeds tourists. Card nodded. Don't worry about it, he told Mara. I wasn't really expecting them to leave a trail that you could follow. Have Fawn bring the starry ice aboard and we'll... Jade, Fawn's voice cut in. Over there, coming in from starboard. I see it, Mara said, her tone suddenly crisp. Tarek, you've got company. Coming in 117 by 15, your vector. Booster was already running along the command walkway towards the forward viewport, Corin right behind him. 117 by 15, Bodway, he snapped. What do you see? Nothing, a bewildered Lacerdosian voice said from one of the crew pits. These Shashmink sensors. It's hard to see, Mara put in, her voice coming now from the Air Venture's main bridge speaker system. Small and dark. Looks a little like a severely modified TIE fighter. Doesn't show up well on sensors either, Fawn added. Still see nothing, Bodway insisted. Skip it, Booster said tartly. He and Corin were standing together now by the forward viewports, Booster's head turning slowly back and forth as he searched the sky. Get the deflector shields up and stand by turbo lasers. Shield shorting again, Bodway said. Turbo lasers. I'm getting a transmission now, Shish barked. Strong signal. It's, well, staying at all. I don't know what it is. Mara? Card asked. We're picking up the edge of it, Mara confirmed. Pretty faint out here, though. So far, the computer's not making anything of it. There it is, Corin snapped, jabbing out a finger. Coming straight at us. Get that bridge deflector up, Booster snapped. Now! Mara? Card called. We're still out of firing range, she said tightly. Better take cover. Card glanced around, belatedly wondering where Mirax was. He spotted her at once, heading at a dead run back towards the relative safety of the aft bridge, her bewildered-looking son Valen clutching in her arms. For a moment he considered joining her, realized it was already too late, and turned back instead towards the forward viewports. He could see the unknown intruder now, burning space directly towards them, like no ship he'd ever seen. Bridge deflector not coming up, Bodway snarled. Ship going to hit! Hit the ground, Booster snapped, grabbing Corin's arm and dropping them both flat on the command walkway. Card took a long step towards the nearest crew pit, realized he wouldn't have time to jump down into it, and stopped. The intruder was still coming, and then, at the last second, it made a strange corkscrewing maneuver to one side and shot around and above past the viewport. It took Card a second to find his voice. Mara? You all right? She asked anxiously. Yes, we're fine, he assured her, breaking his paralysis and starting down the command walkway towards where Booster and Corin were still stretched out on the deck. Where did it go? Overshot the command superstructure, cut around behind the drive nozzles where we couldn't see it, then jumped to light speed, she told him. Same trick as the one Luke spooked. Card frowned out the viewports. This was the same type as that one? It looked like it, Mara told him. Torv's doing a scrub of the sensor data now. Booster and Corin were back on their feet by the time Card reached them. Did you see that? Booster demanded, shaking his head as he brushed himself off. Of all the stupid, churfer-brained stunts! Captain, this is Torv, the young man's voice cut him off. It's confirmed. Same type of ship as before. Where did you see this other ship? Booster asked. In the asteroids, near the Cavril Charon base, Card told him. Mara, what about that transmission? We're running it now, she said. It consists of what seems to be a short message, followed by a pause, followed by a repeat of the message. So far, we're not coming up with a match to any known language, code, or encrypt. Probably something useless like that Quella ship Calrissian chased halfway across the galaxy, Booster said, with a scornful sniff. That's what we thought at first, Mara said. I don't think so anymore. Why? Booster asked. Just because it was transmitting something? Because it was transmitting specifically towards this ship, Card said. And the fact that it paused and then repeated itself implies it was expecting an answer. Booster scratched his cheek. Does kind of sound that way, doesn't it? Mara, you're running Imperial codes against it too, aren't you? First thing we tried, she told him. Nothing came even close. Yet they came in for a close look at an Imperial Star Destroyer, Card mused. And before that, they were poking around a pirate base with suspected Imperial ties. Sounds like they're either already involved with the Empire or else want to be, Mara said. Or maybe it's something else entirely, Fawn put in, her voice suddenly tight. I've just run a phenome analysis on that transmission, and I think I found the name Thrawn in there. Card frowned. Let's hear it. There was a brief pause, and then over the comlink came a sputter of alien language. Squarely in the middle of the gibberish. I heard it, Booster said. It was kind of broken up, like he was stuttering or something. That's because you were getting his full name there, Mara said, her voice suddenly grim. Mithron Nerodo. Thrawn was what he called his core name. Out of the corner of his eye, Card saw something flash across Corrin's expression. So you were on a full name basis with the guy? Booster asked, with forced casualness. Hardly, Mara said. But I did know his full name, and there weren't a lot of people in the Empire who did. Card chewed his lower lip. You know anything about his history? His early history with the Empire, I mean. Not really, she said. Some Imperial commander ran into him on a deserted world just inside the unknown regions while chasing smugglers. He was impressed by his tactical ability and brought him back to Coruscant. Rumor was his own people had exiled him there, incidentally. Why? Booster asked. I don't know, Mara said. But it could be that ship was someone who's finally figured out where he went and has come looking for him. Booster snorted. They're gonna be real disappointed when they find out they're 10 years too late. Maybe not, Corrin muttered. It could be it's not Thrawn they're looking for. Card studied the other's face. There was something there, all right. I take it that's not just an idle guess, he said mildly. Would you care to share it with the rest of us? Corrin's lip twitched. I wasn't supposed to say anything about this to anyone but Booster, he said reluctantly. But under the circumstances. That Deveronian you got the Kamas document from, Card. He found some other data cards in the same batch. One of them was labeled the Hand of Thrawn. Card nodded slowly. So that was the secret Leia had been holding out on him at Wayland. And the reason she'd been giving Mara such a strange look. The data card was so badly scrambled that they couldn't get anything from it, Corrin continued. Counselor Organa Solo thought it might be Thrawn's version of an Emperor's hand. General Bella Bliss wanted me to ask Booster if he'd run across the term before. Never, Booster said, shaking his head. Card? Mara? No, Card said. Me neither, Mara said. And personally, I find it hard to picture Thrawn having that kind of shadow agent. He wasn't into the same kind of political manipulation that the Emperor was. Besides, he had the Nogri if he needed something special done. Yet, there was a data card with that title in the Emperor's private files, Card pointed out. It must mean something. How do you know it was from his private files? Booster asked. Because if it was something Bella Bliss could have looked up in the Comparis archives, he wouldn't have sent Corin to ask you about it, Card pointed out. Point, Booster rumbled. So you figure these ships are looking for either Thrawn or this Hand of Thrawn. Or else the person in the ship is the Hand of Thrawn, Mara said. Whichever. It's starting to look more important than ever that we track these ships down. Agreed, Card said. How do you suggest we start? We've got the vector from their jump a few minutes ago, Mara said. We also got the vector from the Cowron ship. Fawn's plotting an intercept point. Got it, Fawn said. It's an unexplored system in the Gradulus sector, right on the boundary between wild space and the unknown regions. It's listed as the Niraron system, so someone must have visited the place, but there's no other data. Sounds too easy, Booster rumbled. They wouldn't really be stupid enough to jump directly to their base like that, would they? Especially not with us watching. Depends on how they make their jumps, Card pointed out. They may not have the computing power aboard to handle complicated hyperspace calculations. Or it could be that their return home is pre-programmed to make sure that none of their ships go astray. They also may not realize we could still pull their vector for a few microseconds after they jump, Mara added. Both times now they've made sure that they were out of our line of sight before kicking in their hyperdrive. They might think that's all they need to do. At any rate, it's a place to start, Card said, an odd reluctance seeping into him. A reluctance Mara evidently could hear in his voice. Would we rather not go? She asked. We could just turn all this over to the New Republic and let them handle it. Corin, Booster prompted. The X-Wing pilot was still staring out the viewport at the stars. I can take it back to Bella Bliss, no problem, he said, sounding vaguely distracted. But I doubt he'll be able to do anything about it. At least not now. This whole Kamas thing has everybody in a knot-tie twist. Card nodded, his instinctive reluctance turning still darker. Booster was right. This was too easy. A trap, perhaps, or at the very least a wild thresher hunt and a waste of time. But if it wasn't... No, you'd better check it out, he sighed. Have Fawn transmitter scheduled to Chin before you jump. We'll sort her assignments out among the other ships. Right, Mara said. Any place in particular you want to rendezvous when we get back? Just get in touch with the network. They'll find me, Card told her. And be careful. Don't worry, Mara assured him grimly. If they're trying some game, they'll be sorry they tried it on us. See you later. Card thumbed off his comlink. Good luck, he said softly. Don't worry. They'll be fine, Booster said, plucking the comlink from Card's hand and replacing it in his own belt. Mara and Fawn are both pretty sharp, and the Starry Ice is a good ship. Better than this one, anyway, he added, glowering as he brushed past Card and stomped back down the command walkway. All right, Bodway. What the blinkin' braid muck is going on with those shields? He squatted down to hear the Laerdocian's excuses, and as he did so, Card stepped over to Corin's side. You were right here when that alien ship went past, he said quietly. Did you happen to sense anything unusual about it? Corin threw him a sideways look. What do you mean? I mean, whatever it is that Skywalker picks up on when he gets near a group of clones, Card told him. Whatever this disturbance is that it creates in the Force. For a long moment, the only sound on the bridge was the argument going on behind them, now become three-way as Shish joined in on Bodway's side. I don't know what Luke senses when there are clones nearby, Corin said at last, his voice barely audible. All I felt here was the presence of something alien. Card nodded. I see. Corin turned to face him. My talent is not exactly public knowledge, Card, he said, his tone somewhere between challenge and threat. Yes, I know, Card replied evenly. Wise of you to keep it that way. I think so, Corin countered. Problem is, you're in the business of selling information. Ah, but I'm also in the business of survival, Card said. And in this big, dangerous galaxy, one occasionally needs a helping hand. He cocked an eyebrow. I always think it's nice when there are cards in that hand which the opposition doesn't know about. Corin's forehead furrowed slightly. So that's how it works, huh? You keep quiet, and I owe you one? Card looked back along the command walkway. From around the corner of the aft bridge, Mirax and Valen had reappeared. Mirax looking cautious, the boy tugging impatiently at his mother's hand with the obvious wish to run to Daddy. Yes, you owe me one, he told Corin. But be assured that when I collect, it'll be something safe. I owe Mirax that much. He considered. Either that, or something vital that absolutely has to be done. Corin snorted gently. That covers a lot of ground. Card shrugged. As I said, it's a big, dangerous galaxy. And that's the end of the chapter. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you all soon.